Okay, can I start now? Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's press briefing. My name is Marie-Agnes Hein, and I'm the head of the Communication Department. And we want to use today's briefing to update you on the recent developments regarding COVID-19 vaccines and treatments, and we'll also be happy to respond to your questions on these and related topics. So I'm delighted to have with me two colleagues in the room today. Dr. Fergus Sweeney, the head of Clinical Studies and Manufacturing Task Force, and Dr. Georgi Genov, the head of Pharmacovigilance. A third colleague, Dr. Marco Cavalieri, the head of Biological Health Threats and Vaccine Strategy, is connected remotely. Initially, Dr. Cavalieri will provide you with an update on the most recent developments. Then we will have about half an hour for questions. As usual, your microphone is disabled for the duration of the briefing and will be opened up only for questions. The briefing is broadcast via YouTube and Europe by satellite, and the footage can be used free of charge by all media, and the respective links can be found in the invite you received. I'm now handing over to Dr. Cavalieri, the head of Biological Health Threats and Vaccine Strategy. Dr. Cavalieri, please.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I would like to update you on some important topics. As announced, EMA has started evaluating an application to extend the use of Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine Comirnaty to young children aged 5 to 11. The application is based on a dose which is 3 times lower than the approved dose for adults. The proposed dosing schedule is to maintain 2 doses given at least 3 weeks apart. Our recommendation is expected within approximately 2 months, but supplementary information or analysis may be needed. Data on the use of COVID-19 vaccine in children are being generated also for another messenger RNA vaccine, Spikevax, and EMA is discussing potential timing of application to extend the use of this COVID-19 vaccine to children in the future. We will update you on the progress in the coming weeks. Following the recommendation for a booster dose for Comirnaty, a conclusion on a booster dose for Spikevax to be administered in people 12 years of age 6 months after the second dose is expected next week on the 25th of October. The company proposes a booster dose of 50 micrograms, which is half the dose compared to what was used in the primary series. And the EMA will communicate, as always, once the CHMP reaches a conclusion. Over the coming weeks, we expect to receive data on the Janssen booster as well, given with a 6-month interval after the first dose. This will help us to determine if the data will be sufficient to conclude on our recommendation for a booster dose also for this vaccine. We also continue to collect more data anyway on the efficacy and safety of booster doses. And there is also new evidence on the use of heterologous vaccination, which is when the vaccine given as a second or a third dose is different from the vaccine that was initially received. This strategy, which is also known as mix and match strategy, is being used and considered by some countries in the EU, and just yesterday endorsed by the US FDA in the context of heterologous boosters. Indeed, we are seeing some promising results from studies that confirm that this approach would trigger with certain vaccine combination a strong immune response than when the same vaccine is used for an additional shot. As more evidence is being consolidated, we will consider if such clinical data could be sufficient to expand the recommendation on the use of each individual vaccine. You may have seen our announcement that EMA has ended the rolling review of CureVac's COVID-19 vaccine after the company informed the agency that it was withdrawing from the process and not pursuing a marketing authorization application. Although the rolling review allowed EMA to speed up the review of the data, there were still questions, especially about the manufacturing of the vaccine that was still not solved, aside from the need to review in detail all the clinical data and any related uncertainty. We understand from the company that they have now decided to focus their efforts on a development program for a second-generation COVID-19 vaccine on which EMA has already provided scientific advice, and we look forward to engaging further with them. Overall, we are pleased to see that the pipeline of new COVID-19 vaccine is still strong. Having a range of different platform technology remains important in the fight against this pandemic and to tackle also future pandemics. Currently, 4 vaccines are authorized for use in the EU, 2 based on the messenger RNA technology and 2 adenoviral vector vaccines. Another 4 vaccines are under EMA's rolling review, which are based on different platform technologies, 1 inactivated virus vaccine, 2 protein subunit vaccine based on the spike protein, and 1 adenoviral vector vaccine. We are carrying on this assessment, and our aim is to make them available, if proven safe and effective, to people across the EU and around the globe as soon as possible. Other vaccines might be coming in the near future to further expand the portfolio of vaccines available. For the authorized vaccines, EMA is in continuous dialogue with all marketing authorization holders as they seek to expand their production capacity for the supply of vaccine. The agency provides guidance and advice on the evidence required to support and expedite applications to add new sites or increase the capacity of the existing one for the manufacturing of high-quality COVID-19 vaccines. The latest example is our approval of 2 new finished product manufacturing sites for Pfizer-BioNTech. This activity overall has enabled the EU to deliver more than 700 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to European people and export over 1 billion doses to the rest of the world to more than 150 countries. As you might have seen, the conditional market authorization for Comirnaty has also been renewed for 1 year by the European Commission based on EMA's recommendation. Similarly to Spikevax, the status of the clinical data included in the specific obligation will be discussed in due course to define the relevance in the context of the conditional marketing authorization. Another topic of recent interest has been the comparison between immunity conferred by vaccines and by infection, what is called natural immunity. Data from studies have shown that when a person who has recovered from COVID-19 then receives a vaccine, it increased the individual's ability to fight future infection and actually better protected from any new infection, supporting the importance of vaccinating recovered individuals as well. The optimal vaccination schedule for naturally exposed individuals is, however, not well defined, and more study will be warranted to better inform vaccination strategies in this context. I also need to stress that with a death toll of nearly 5 million people worldwide, at least officially, the human cost of natural immunity, in other words, letting the virus run wild, is not tolerable. In the meantime, we continue our evaluation of other COVID-19 treatments there are in the pipeline, and we expect opinions from the EMA Human Medicine Committee, the CHMP, for at least some of the treatment in the coming weeks. There is an increased understanding of the actual timing and patient selection of the different types of medicine for COVID-19. It has been confirmed that antiviral agents, such as the monoclonal antibodies, which are able to neutralize the virus, or small molecules interfering with the replication of the virus, should be used as early as possible after observing symptoms in order to prevent serious disease. Some of these agents has also been studied for prophylaxis or preventative use, either in household settings after a case of infection has been confirmed or in a broader prophylaxis context. Such use could be particularly valuable for vulnerable groups that might not respond well to vaccination. For the treatment of severe COVID-19, that is when patients might not respond well to initial treatment and might be needed to be admitted to an hospital or intensive care, several immunomodulatory agents have been studied in combination with steroids, which are nowadays standard of care, in order to improve and accelerate cure and ultimately increase survival. Agents belonging to all these different types of use are under assessment by the EMA. One of the oral antiviral treatment of interest has been molnupiravir, as many of you are aware. The company has recently disclosed some top-line results from clinical trials, and EMA has been in constant dialogue with the company, and we expect the start of the rolling review for this product next week. In the past week, EMA is also starting a rolling review for Evusheld, which is a combination of two monoclonal antibodies able to neutralize the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is being developed by AstraZeneca for the prevention of COVID-19 in adults. While our main attention is still on COVID-19, we should not forget about other seasonal diseases. This year's Flu Awareness Week, which is taking place right now this week, aims to increase the uptake of a vaccine against seasonal influenza, especially in people in risk groups. We encourage everybody who is offered a flu vaccine to get the shot and protect themselves and their family, friends, and colleagues. Preliminary data also indicates that flu vaccines can be co-administered with COVID-19 vaccines. I will end here to leave time for your question. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cavalieri, and we will now take questions from the floor. Please, so far I have one hand. I only want to remind everyone that if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand so that I can see it. So the first question comes from Helen Collis from Politico. Helen, please go ahead.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you. Thank you for this. Can you provide some details, please, on the manufacturing questions that were outstanding on the CureVac vaccine that has now been withdrawn? Can you explain what those questions were about? And secondly, you mentioned, Marco Cavalieri, the mix and match strategy for boosting. When are we likely to see, what kind of information might we expect from the EMA on this moving forwards? Would it be guidance? Would it be changing to labelling? And I'm wondering when we might see that happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. Dr. Cavalieri, please.
Yeah, so on your first question, there were a number of questions that were open with respect to the entire manufacturing of the vaccine. Again, we were still in the rolling review, and particularly on how the vaccine was going to be handled and the storage conditions. All these aspects require further engagement with the company, and of course now this has been withdrawn, so it will not be continuing such dialogue. With respect to your mix and match question, indeed we are acknowledging that papers have been published after studies were conducted by academic groups, in particular a study from the NIH has been recently published as a preprint and was taken into account in the deliberation from the FDA and in the discussion of their advisory committee, but also data from Europe and also from the UK are coming up that would be quite important to look at in order to understand what is the impact of this heterologous approach, and indeed could be the basis of any potential submission from companies in the future that could help us in updating the product information to allow this to be included.
Thank you very much. The next question comes from Donato Mancini from Financial Times. Donato, the floor is yours. Donato,
Hi.
do you hear us?
Hi, thanks for taking my question. So following up on Helen's question, do you have any information on CureVac's production lines being repurposed to make other vaccines? Have they approached you on this?
Sorry, Donato, can you speak a little bit louder? It's difficult to understand.
Yes. Sorry, I have a really bad cold. My apologies. So following up on Helen's question, do you have any information on CureVac's production lines being repurposed to make other vaccines? It is my understanding that they should approach you to do this. So my question is, have they approached you to do that? And I have another question as well on today's figures from Pfizer. What do you say to those figures on the relative efficacy of a booster dose? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The one on the production line I'm going to give to Dr. Fergus Sweeney.
So regarding CureVac's intentions for its production lines, that wouldn't be something that we have at present. If they were to be repurposed for another vaccine in agreement with one of the other marketing authorization holders, it's the other marketing authorization holder who would have to submit data and a variation to their application so that we could add that. It wouldn't be CureVac themselves. Thank you. I think you had an additional point on Pfizer, which I didn't catch, but I think that may be for Marco.
Yes, Marco, perhaps you can add that information.
Yeah, of course, in the literature, we're seeing every day new data emerging with respect to the effectiveness of the different vaccines, including the Pfizer-BioNTech one. And also we have seen some data about the impact of the booster, particularly from Israel. So we will be evaluating all this data, and we look forward also seeing data from the European Union to understand exactly where we are in terms of real-world evidence around the use of this vaccine. And we do believe that these data are anyway quite important in informing vaccination campaigns and understanding when to give the booster and which population might be in need of such a booster strategy. So more work to be done, very difficult to conclude on any individual study that gets published.
Thank you very much. The next question comes from Danny Kemp from AFP. Danny. We cannot hear you. You're muted. Try again. No, we still can't hear you.
Let me try and...
Now we hear you. All fine.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. Two questions. Firstly, there was a report today that Sputnik is... there's no possibility of Sputnik being authorized by the end of this year. Do you have any details on that? Secondly, apologies if this is a dumb question, but there we go. For the mix and match, is there going to be any way of knowing which mix is best with what, whether mRNA is best followed by adenovirus or vice versa, or I mean, any idea about what will be the best policy for that? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Danny. The first question goes to Dr. Sweeney.
So regarding the evaluation of the Sputnik vaccine, that remains under rolling review. We're continuing the assessment and interactions with the company, and I can't comment on the timelines and how they will progress at this point. Thank you.
And for the question on mix and match, Dr. Cavalieri.
Indeed, it's extremely relevant to look in detail at all this data and try to understand what could be the best strategy, at least in terms of the immune response that they will be eliciting, and what will be then the kinetics of the antibodies over time following a certain sequence of vaccine used. So it's premature to say, but I think it's quite clear that the messenger RNA seems to be working quite well as boosters, and they are really able to mount quite a robust immune response. We will have to anyway evaluate all this data and to understand what we can say in this regard. But overall, it seems that this strategy is something that all type of vaccine could be benefiting from. And indeed, different combinations would still be extremely valuable.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Cavalieri. I'm now reading to you a question from Wall Street Journal. The colleague Denise Roland, she doesn't have good audio, obviously. So she's asking whether we can provide an update on EMA's review of the Moderna vaccine in younger age groups in light of the FDA's hesitation to approve in teens. That's also a question for you, Marco.
Yeah, as said in the introductory speech, we are discussing with Moderna to understand by when data could be submitted. As you know, the vaccine is authorized from 12 years of age, and we will have to understand by when the data in younger children will be made available, and we will take by then what could be the time frame for any potential decision in that regard, also taking into account all the evidence that is coming on the safety of all the different vaccines in the use in adolescents.
Thank you very much. We now have another question from Helen Collis from Politico. Helen, please go ahead.
It's about Sputnik. Just picking up on the Sputnik comments, Sputnik Light, is the latest product to come out from the Russian team. Are there any talks with the EMA over a possible filing for Sputnik Light? Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Helen. Dr. Cavalieri, please.
Yeah, we have seen the discussion that is taking place on the so-called Sputnik Light. At this stage, we don't have really any clear understanding of whether the company intends to submit an application also for this vaccine in the European Union, but we will continue the dialogue to have more clarity on this.
Thanks a lot. Yes, we also received a question from TASS on to give an update on the Sputnik evaluation, but this has already been responded to. Therefore, I'm going to take a question from Victoria English from Matt New. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
can you hear me?
Hear you well.
Yeah.
We can hear you well.
Oh, okay. We're entering the winter season, and I'm wondering whether there's any new view or any new information you can give us on the variant picture. I mean, going into the winter, it looks as if the Delta variant is still the dominant concern, but is there anything else you can tell us about the landscape for variants?
That's another question for you, Marco. Dr. Cavalieri, please.
Yeah, and it's an important question. Of course, we are all looking into this and try to understand where the virus is going and what we might be expecting in the coming weeks and months. Clearly, the Delta is still the dominant strain that is circulating. We already start seeing that there are some additional mutations that are taking place in few cases over the Delta. You heard about this AY4.2 variant, and we have to monitor very closely because that is what might be happening, that the variant backbone remains, but additional mutations are coming up that will be added to the one including the Delta, and might be also something that could cause more transmissibility or some type of immune escape. So it's very important that we continue this work globally together, not only with European public health authorities, which is what we are doing right now, but also behind Europe with WHO. And WHO is putting quite a lot of effort now in setting up a good system that could make surveillance and come up rapidly with decisions with respect to new variants.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cavalieri. And I think we have exhausted today's question and interest in the topics. So thank you very much to everyone for participating in this press briefing today, for your interest. I also want to thank the participants today on the EMA side. And if you have any further questions, as always, do not hesitate to follow up with the press office and address your question to press@ema.europa.eu. And thanks a lot and goodbye.